Good evening. Welcome to the Who's Left podcast, a show about Indiana politics, history, and culture from an unapologetically leftist perspective. My name is Scott Aaron Rogers, and I'm broadcasting from Bloomington. So this past Saturday, Hoosiers at nearly 30 different events across the state came together to protest immigrations and customs enforcement and the agency's use of Miami Correctional Facility to house detainees. You know, when the Department of Homeland Security announced plans to hold people at the Indiana facility last year, they dubbed it the, quote, Speedway Slammer, despite the site being 70 miles and over an hour's travel from the home of the Indy 500. They are neither geographically correct nor half as cute as they think they are. And their cheeky name game hides the real horror taking place at the country's immigration detention facilities. At least 31 people have died in ICE custody since the beginning of Trump's second term, including 2 here at Miami. Stuart Mora, an immigrants' rights advocate with the Indiana Organizing Project, was one of the individuals responsible for putting together Saturday's statewide day of action, and tonight we'll talk to him about the event, the state of immigrants' rights here in Indiana, both inside and outside detention facilities. We'll look at the Braun administration's cooperation with the federal government, the lie about such complicity making Indiana safer and more prosperous, and the toll on Hoosiers, both human and economic. Now, before I welcome Stuart, let me quickly ask for your support. This is an independent media project. We don't paywall content. We don't have billionaire benefactors. Only individuals like you keep this thing going. It is a foundational principle of Who's Left and the Progressive Indiana Network that we refuse to hide important information behind paywalls in the middle of a political crisis, even if that's not in our financial best interest. So please, if you find value in this work, go to progressiveindiana.net and subscribe at the paid level. It's only $5 a month or $50 a year to help us build the infrastructure that will pop the right-wing media bubble in this state. And while a paid subscription is the best way to help grow and sustain this project, you can help in other ways. By liking and sharing on social media, commenting, leaving reviews, providing feedback, and forwarding our content to your people. You get us when you can. Mostly, we just want you here in this community of Hoosiers dedicated to making this state and its government work for all of us, not just the elite few. Please join us. You can follow me on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads at whosleft.us, and on Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at Who's Left. That is spelled HOOS Left. Progressive Indiana Network's handle is the full spelled out name on most sites, but on Blue Sky and TikTok, it is PIN Indiana. Please help us grow with a follow wherever you're at. Tell the others. Let's build a radically democratic Indiana together. Now, let's welcome our guest this evening, Stuart Mora. Stuart, thanks so much for joining me here tonight.
Thanks so much for having me, Scott.
So I really appreciate what you're doing here, and I appreciate the work you're doing out there in the community. And even, you know, as somebody who isn't personally affected by these immigration crackdowns that are going on, you know, as a human being with a heart, I am certainly concerned, to say the least. So I guess let's start by talking about Saturday. Stuart, can you tell us, give us the lay of the land, what exactly happened, where all did protests take place, how was turnout, etc.?
Yeah, so the campaign started, we launched it back in February 22nd with the 500-person action at the governor's mansion in the snow. And we've built it out little by little. We had a press conference with Congressman Carson, my congressman, who did a congressional oversight visit at Miami Correctional on April 9th and got a lot of press. Congressman Carson joined us in calling for the end of ICE detention at Miami Correctional. And then we built to last Saturday. We had 27 actions across the state. As part of those actions, I learned where Fowler and Pierceton, Indiana are, because there were actions taking place in those towns. We are very clear that if we are going to win, this cannot be an Indianapolis-based or a Bloomington-based. It has to be a statewide campaign. And so we were, despite the rain and the thunderstorms, people came out. We had a ton of press coverage all over the state, which was really our goal, was to draw attention to the fact that currently our state is holding approximately 600 ICE detainees in truly abhorrent conditions at Miami Correctional Facility just north of Kokomo. So we feel great about it, and we will be building to a statewide weekend of action the last weekend of August. And I expect that you're going to see quite a bit more press coverage between now and then around the detainees themselves, as well as the local families that have been affected and are currently affected by ICE detention.
You mentioned that trying to garner attention for the conditions at Miami, certainly, and just the conditions and the human toll that these immigration crackdowns have on people here in our state. And you certainly managed that. I understand that you guys got a mention on last night's Rachel Maddow show, so national news, very big platform there, certainly. But in the end, obviously, just getting the attention isn't the end goal. Like, what are the larger demands of the movement? What are the asks? What are you guys trying to work toward down the line in the long run?
Yeah, so I spent the last 5 years working at an immigration law firm. Great people, Munoz Legal here in Indianapolis, and a lot of my work was with detained immigrants and their families. And this is prior to the current Trump administration. So this world was very familiar to me. I interacted with ICE on basically a daily basis. And so when the changes occurred and began back in February and March of last year, we saw it up close and personal. That we knew the changes were drastic, in many ways completely unnecessary. In fact, very expensive for taxpayers in completely unnecessary ways. And most importantly, we saw the harm that was being done to innocent families, to so many U.S. citizen children. And we're very clear. We knew from our conversations with ICE that the bottleneck in their operations is their access to detention space. We know because they told us. They told us we are being told to arrest X number of people. We don't know where to put them. And that has been the issue going back prior to this Trump administration. When they took office last January, they had access to 41,000 detention beds. And that hit a peak of 73,000 detention beds in January of this year. And it's actually fallen from there, partially due to the pushback. Places like here in Marion County, where we effectively took away 128 detention beds from ICE. What we say, Scott, is every detention bed at this point represents a family in crisis. The violent criminals were already detained, and right now, the people that are being detained here in Indiana are being pulled over for traffic stops.
Yeah, I want to dig into that, I guess. And I think I saw the statistic that like 70% of the people who wind up in ICE custody don't have any criminal record whatsoever. And then if you look deeper into that, of the folks that do, it's largely nonviolent offenses. It is stuff like traffic offenses or petty crimes. It is not these violent criminals, the worst of the worst that the Trump folks said that they were going after.
Yeah. Absolutely. And Governor Braun himself said the worst first. And part of what we're very clear about is we don't actually think that this was Governor Braun and his administration's intention when they signed up for this. What is happening right now is that Hoosier families are being torn apart. And I'll share a very clear story. I went to visit a family on Friday down in southern Indiana. Mom's been here since she was 5 years old. Dad's been here since he was a kid. 4 U.S. citizen children. And mom sobbed for 2 hours. Dad's been detained for 3 months. Imagine the toll that is taking on 4 children. And she, as she was crying and telling her story, what she kept going back to is my kids don't deserve any of this. He is a great dad. He's been here most of his life. He has no criminal history. He was pulled over, Scott. He was pulled over for speeding. And now he's on month 3 in ICE detention. And our mutual aid network has come together to support that family. But there's no repairing the trauma that is being done to those children. And they're Hoosier children.
And that's the thing I think gets lost in a lot of these. In a lot of cases, you know, the folks that are here, they have children who are U.S. citizens. That doesn't seem to stop the administration. They don't seem to care about the harm they are doing to their own citizens' children. And you know, larger than that, you know, listen. I understand that with a lot of these white nationalists in the Trump administration, they don't think those U.S. citizen children are legitimately U.S. citizens. But even if you want to think, okay, well, what about the people who, again, in their mind, are legitimate U.S. citizens? You're harming these families, you're harming their neighbors, you're harming the kids that go to school with these other kids, all the knock-on effects. Harm entire communities, not just these families, which again is bad enough as it is.
Yeah, look, I understand that there are the Stephen Millers of the world, and I'm going to set them aside because I have spent a lot of time organizing in quote unquote red areas of Indiana. And what I know is that the people that I've met, many of them Trump voters, they believe in family. They're good, hardworking people. And if they know what is going on, if I share a story like what I just shared with you, they're going to jump in and try to help that family because they care about kids, because they care about family, because deep down they say, you know, it's not that woman's fault who was brought here as a 5-year-old who's been living here her whole life. The system's broken. But what about the kids? What about the kids? We got to look out for the kids because Hoosiers are family oriented. It's a true statement about this state. And I think that's part of what we truly believe is when people know the facts and not just the rhetoric of the Stephen Millers of the world, the vast majority of people are on our side. They don't want to see this unnecessary cruelty happen to innocent people.
And it's true. I think most people are good people, and especially like when you know somebody personally in your own life, and that it really affects you and makes you see things through a different lens. You know, not just the over there that you kind of see on TV. But you know, one of the things that you hear from the anti-immigration crowd is, "Oh, well, we just want them to do it the quote right way." Well, I understand the administration is taking a lot of the avenues to do things the right way away.
Correct. Yeah, correct. Look, we have there's 3 families that we're supporting right now. All of them, the mother, the wife, are U.S. citizens, right? So you're talking about the spouse of a U.S. citizen with U.S. citizen children being detained or deported. You know, I'm thinking through the 3 stories. None of them have significant criminal history. So what are we accomplishing? And these are people who have pending marriage petitions, right? They are going through the legal process. I spoke with a woman here in Indianapolis who's a U.S. citizen. She had her 6-year-old and her 4-year-old running around, sweet little kids. And I'll tell 2 parts of that story. One is they're on year 7 of going through the legal process of petitioning for him to become a legal permanent resident. That's step 1, right? This is a person who is currently in ICE detention. No criminal history. He was picked up as a result of mistaken identity. He's going to be detained at least another month. 6-year-old and a 4-year-old at home. And mom said, yeah, we got in the car, the 6-year-old, he kept telling me that he needs to be the man of the house now because dad's not here.
Oh, man.
And at 6 years old. And she said, we got in the car and I told him to buckle up, right? Like any parent would do. Told him to buckle up. And he turned to his 4-year-old brother and said, we got to put our seatbelts on or they'll come get mommy too.
Oh, my God. That's heartbreaking stuff. And yeah,
it's the real trauma that our own federal government is doing to our fellow citizens and to the most innocent, sweet. Like, these kids don't deserve any of this. I am the son of a pediatrician, and my mom, as a pediatrician, is horrified because she knows the damage that's being done. And this damage can't be reversed. It's with them their whole lives. And
yeah, I was gonna say, like, even if dad's released tomorrow and gets his paperwork in order and becomes a citizen and they live happily ever after, that trauma doesn't just go away. Like you said, they're going to take that with them their entire lives. They're going to need therapy inevitably down the road. Everybody should go to therapy, but like these kids are especially going to need it. And it breaks your heart. And to be just cynical and put things in like raw black and white numbers for folks who want to do things that way, that's an additional strain on the healthcare system right down the line, the mental health system, which we already is underfunded and understaffed. This Miami facility that you guys were organizing against, right? The governor and ICE, they advertised this thing. It was going to be some boon for Indiana, right? That we were going to make money housing immigrants here, that they were going to get paid like 4 times the regular nightly rate that they charge for housing, folks on the state side next door. My understanding is that Indiana invested a lot of money up front to upgrade this facility to house these detainees.
$16 million. Yep.
And we're not getting paid for it, or we've only been paid a very small amount relative to what we've put out for it.
Yeah, the state has lost money thus far. The federal government is 4 months behind on payments. And if you want to, one of the things I've shared with our leaders to provide a little hope, a little glimmer of hope, is they just announced they're closing quote unquote Alligator Alcatraz down in Florida.
I saw that.
And, the rhetoric is all over the place, but the reality is that the federal government never paid back what they had promised the state of Florida. And I promise you that's part of why they're closing it, whatever they say. And it's a real possibility here in Indiana that we've gone through all of this and our state ends up losing money on committing this travesty.
Are you telling me that Donald Trump, the greatest businessman and negotiator ever, as he would tell you, is responsible for like stiffing his contractors and people that have done work for him? Whoever could have seen it coming? It's not like he has a history of this or anything.
It is what it is. In the end, I know that the money is going to move a lot of the middle, the folks who are on the fence about this stuff. In the end, Scott, I'm the one who talks to detainees and their families every day. We've talked about the families. We haven't even talked about the detainees and the suffering and the horrors of that awful. I'm very careful about the use of the word concentration camp. It's very, very close. It's very, very close to meeting the exact definition of a concentration camp at Miami Correctional, because so many people are being held illegally in that facility. And how do I know that? Because I know that filing a habeas petition is what you file in federal court to say the federal government is holding me illegally. There's so many pending habeas petitions in the Northern District of Indiana, which is where Miami Correctional is, that it takes over 3 months to get a decision on your habeas petition. While you're sitting there, many cases, we know they're being held illegally. We're just waiting for a judge to order it.
Yeah, geez. And yeah, well, let's dig into that. I guess I wanted to bring up the numbers and the cost of things just for, those folks who are concerned about those things. But, let's zoom back in and bring it down to the human toll that it takes on the families. We've talked about that some, but yeah, let's move on and talk about the detainees. Obviously, you said that these folks, in many cases, are being held illegally. Even if they're technically being held legally, they're being held often longer than they should be, or on charges that wouldn't warrant deportation or whatever consequences that the administration is promising. And then the conditions inside the facility, just day to day, also not great. I understand a couple people have died there at Miami.
Correct. Yeah, 2 people have died in the last 3 months. Unfortunately, I'm going back to February. I remember I was at an Ash Wednesday prayer vigil out at the Clay County Jail in Brazil, which is also a nice detention facility on Ash Wednesday. So I remember it very clearly because Lorth Sim, the first gentleman who died, the death was announced that day. And I had said a week prior, because we were talking to detainees and we knew there is no medical care, there is no responsiveness. And I said, somebody's going to die in that facility. And within a week, somebody died. And within 2 more months, another person died. And the detainees told Congressman Carson, and Congressman Carson said this at the press conference, the detainees said there was a medical emergency. We tried to get the guards' attention. The guards thought we were joking, and the person died. Imagine being in a facility, a very stressful facility. Everyone can agree that being in a prison is very hard on your physical body, not to mention your mental health. Imagine the fear of, what if I have a medical emergency and they just don't respond? I mean, they already know I can't get my prescription medications.
Yeah.
I can't get basic over-the-counter stuff. If I'm sick, they ignore me, and maybe 2 weeks later I get some Tylenol. They already know this stuff. They're already living in that facility. They've seen 2 people die. And, I'll share one story with you, Scott. There's a gentleman, and his story should be coming out soon publicly. I talked to him and I said, my guy, I can't, you're talking about going public with your story. I can't protect you. Nobody's can protect you in there. Your lawyer can't protect you. There's nothing I can do, but it's courageous, but I just want you to know the truth before you make this decision. And he said, it can't possibly get any worse in here. What are they going to do? Come break my hands? There's no way it can get worse in here. Going on his 2nd year in ICE detention.
My God. And, again, I guess for the cynical folks out there, well, of course the detainees are going to complain about their conditions. They want out, obviously. But I understand that, guards, people that work for the facility will also confirm this. And we've got at least one person on the record who has done so.
Yeah, look, I think there's a couple of things, right? Remember that a part of what happens within the ICE detention system is that people get bounced from place to place. Now, I can't tell you factually that it's definitely a strategy, but it sure feels like a strategy of separating people from their attorney, from their family, from their community. It certainly feels that way, right? But what that means is the people that are in Miami have been in other facilities. They're comparing it to something else, and they are saying 100%, not one detainee has disagreed. This is the worst. This is the worst. We are scared. We can't get anything that we're supposed to have. It's hard to talk to our attorney. It's hard to talk to our family. The medical care, we were told 2 pair of underwear, 2 pair of socks, and the laundry broke for 2 months, right?
Ugh.
They're literally like, we're living in filth. They lock us down all the time. And here's the reality. Here's the reality here in Indiana. We signed up for this. We didn't have the staff for it. And yes, I say we because this is our state's facility. The staff themselves told us we are short 34% of the staffing we need to house the people we're housing here. 34%. That's if you believe their numbers. That's their numbers. They're missing more than a third of the staff they need. So of course this stuff happens because they don't have the people to house that number of detainees and inmates.
I mean, on one hand, That's horrible. And it's not great conditions, not great for the detainees there. That it's not great to be short-staffed. On the other hand, I guess that's a positive sign that you're having a hard time finding Hoosiers who want to do this to people.
Sure.
But wow. So I guess let's talk about the Indiana of it all. You said this. You said we. You said us. Our state doing this. We Hoosiers, not you and I, but Hoosiers at large, elected Mike Braun governor. They elected a MAGA state legislature that folks that said they were going to do these things, and at least on this, they have upheld their promises. We passed Senate Bill 76 this past spring, which mandates that state agencies, governmental entities of any kind, schools, universities, hospitals, jails, sheriff's departments, whatever, they have to cooperate with ICE by law. Compare that to, say, in Minnesota, we had these high profile ICE raids and everything that went along with them earlier this winter. And I think a lot of that was, okay, well, they have a Democratic governor, a Democratic state legislature that, were apprehensive, didn't want to cooperate with the feds, pushed back where they could. Our state government not only cooperates, they mandate that all government entities in the state cooperate. How does that change the dynamic in some place here like in Indiana versus, say, like a Minnesota?
Yeah, so I had a lot of people asking me questions after, as things were happening in Minnesota and as they started to wind down. Questions along the lines of, we have to prepare for what's happening in Minnesota. And I never believed that, and I pushed back on it because I said, we're the other end of the spectrum. We are the state where all of the authorities are functioning as ICE. The state, one of the things is the state police have a 287G agreement. They pull people all over all the time. In fact, I have a story here in Indianapolis. State police stopped. Two guys were changing the tire. Police stopped, as they often would, right? Hey, everything okay? I'll put my lights on behind you. They're changing a tire. They put them both into ICE detention. Like that, that they don't need to do a surge of ICE and CBP officers into Indiana because the police are functioning. The sheriff's offices are functioning as ICE, right? And so the way people are almost always coming into contact with ICE in this state is that they're pulled over for some kind of traffic violation, or at least an alleged traffic violation, especially, in the donut counties. And they're arrested for driving without a license, because you can't get a license as an undocumented person. Or I will also say, because the federal government has made it more difficult to obtain a work permit that you qualify for, or to renew a work permit that you have, if you don't have a work permit that's valid, you can't keep your driver's license, right? And so the federal government has made it so now you're driving without a license, but you got to go to work, or you got to take your kids to school, or whatever it is. And that's where they get people, right? It's all the time. It's happening all the time. And if you don't notice it, I promise you, because I take the calls every day.
And these are the kind of things that they're rounding people up for. These are the non-violent. These are the 70% that we talked about earlier. Their only violation is something. It's a paperwork violation. It's I didn't have the right piece of paper. Be it.
Sometimes there's not even a case filed. They pull you over for, you can imagine, right? You've probably been pulled over. Oh, they thought maybe I was speeding, or I had a tail light out or something, right? They pull you over. They don't even give you a ticket, file a case or anything. They just go up. You don't have legal status here. Come on in. You're going into ICE detention. I've seen that happen countless times.
So they very well could just look the other way. Do you think that it's a problem with police in Indiana? They like enjoy this aspect of the jobs? Are you hearing at all from officers, be it state police, be it local police, be it county sheriffs, deputies, that are uncomfortable with this situation, with being, basically made to do the Fed's job for them?
Yeah, so I've talked to enough immigrants who have had enough interactions to know that not every law enforcement officer is arresting the person that they pull over and find that they don't have a license. Okay. One, there is the option of giving an infraction, like a traffic ticket, for no valid license. Two, it is the lowest level misdemeanor. So you can simply issue a summons. You don't have to arrest that person. In fact, if you're a law enforcement officer, it's more work to arrest the person and take them in and have them processed, right? And so the stories that I've heard, it seems, I can't tell you factually that there's certain policies in certain departments or that there's certain officers who are acting different than others. I can just tell you there is a spectrum of how law enforcement is handling this, and that's all I can say.
Yeah.
But there is certainly no reason that if you pull somebody over that you have to arrest them for driving without a license. There's nothing in the law that states that.
And, I mentioned Senate Bill 76, which is the law, Senate Enrolled Act 76 now, that Governor Braun signed earlier this spring, that mandates all of this cooperation. That hasn't actually gone into effect yet, I understand. That doesn't really take hold until July 1st. Is that right? So some of the things that we are talking about at this point are only theoretical, especially with the schools. How are they going to handle this the next school year? This one's winding down right now. It has ended in many places, only a few weeks left in other places. Come the fall, I think we're going to see a real big change. Are you hearing from teachers and administrators with worries about how they're going to handle things going forward?
I'm not hearing a lot. I'm having conversation with other community leaders that are talking with schools and medical facilities as well. There's real concern. There's also real confusion about what they're actually responsible for and where they can draw the lines. There's also a question of how, just because they're supposed to report things, how does that actually play out? A part of why I'm so adamant about pushing back against ICE detention is that, as somebody who's interacted with that system for a long time, I know that just because ICE has contact with somebody does not mean that that person needs to be detained. In fact, the reality is that in many cases, they should not be detained. And I'll give you an example. One, in prior administrations, if somebody got arrested for driving without a license, ICE would often say, that person's not a priority. That's not a real criminal. We're not interested. We're not going to pick them up. We have limited resources. We got to make priorities. Two, let's say somebody gets a DUI. I make no excuses for people that drive intoxicated. You got arrested. Okay, you're going to go into ICE custody now. That's the next step. Your family pays the bond or you get released. You go into ICE custody. Very common that we would negotiate that bond directly with the ICE officer. They go into ICE custody, the bond's paid the same day, and they go home to their family. Now, they got a whole headache they got to deal with. They're now in removal proceedings. They're going to have to figure out what they're going to do about that and hire an attorney. But what are we accomplishing by putting that person in a cage for the next couple of months so that they can't go to work? Their family's in financial crisis. Their kids are traumatized. What are we accomplishing with this policy? It's completely unnecessary. And that is a policy that comes directly from this current administration. They took away ICE officers' ability to negotiate a bond. They have essentially taken away immigration judges' ability to determine a bond, so that the only way you can get out is by filing a habeas petition saying in federal court the federal government is holding me illegally. That's it. That's the only one.
And you know, to come back on it, we've talked about this aspect of this before. That this is a poor use of resources. Like, there, you know, where are we going to put these folks? If there is this command that we're just supposed to round up everybody and, you know, not let folks go on technicalities, right? Where are we going to put folks? You know, I guess they want to build these warehouses now. That's a thing. They're purchasing unoccupied warehouses, ICEs across the country, trying to turn them into detention facilities. I saw that Indianapolis was maybe on the list of places where they're looking at putting one of these that could hold up to 8,500 people.
Yeah, you know, that was all talked about and it was leaked. I think that most of that has been put, you know, there has been huge pushback all over the country for a whole variety of reasons. Obviously, the human rights aspect of it. But also, you know, there was a small town in Georgia, Social Circle, Georgia, I believe is the name of the town. And they wanted to put a, you know, 5,000 or 8,000 person warehouse, you know, detention center. The town said, we're a town of 5,000 people. We don't have water and sewage and everything that needs to happen for that kind of facility. We can't house people in that. That's an industrial facility. And so I think there was a lot of, you know, DHS had some really poor planning, some poor ideas. Whatever you believe about the policy, they're just not feasible. And so I think there's a lot of pushback. Again, I go back to the numbers. 73,000 detention ICE detainees in January. On April 4th, that number was down to 60,000. The pushback is working. I'm here with a message of hope. I see the trauma every day. Don't worry. I promise you, I'm in the middle of it every day. But I also believe that we can win on this fight. And a part of preventing a lot of the trauma is preventing the detention. It's hard enough living every day in fear that one of your loved ones is going to get detained. But it's worse when you're now in a financial crisis and your kids are traumatized and you're trying to piece together, what the hell do I do? Because I don't know if my loved one's coming home ever. And then what does that mean for me and my kids who are all in school here and have lived their whole lives here? I have these conversations with moms and they say, so I moved to rural Guatemala or Honduras. Like, the schools are awful there. Like there's not even real schooling. Like, what do I don't even know what to do because like I still need my kids to get an education. Like, I just think that, and again, these are U.S. citizen children and often it's U.S. citizen parents who are having to wrestle with, what do I don't have a good option. I don't have a good option. And that's why we have to continue to push back because we haven't talked about this yet, Scott. But there's another reason that I believe that the organizing against the detention system is so important. You know, I understand this is like considered a progressive podcast in a progressive space. It's not really how I consider myself, and that's totally okay. What I do see is the rise of an authoritarian regime in our country, right? And the detention space can be used for people that are not immigrants. It already is. Like, they're very clear that they want to come after somebody like me. And they will. They want to put opponents of their administration in cages, just like the immigrants. And a part of pushing back is going, no, you're not going to, this caging people is not the solution to anything. Because eventually they are coming for us. And I think anyone that says otherwise is lying to themselves.
Well, it's true. They've said it. They're on the record. I mean, you know, Trump said, you know, first we're going to get all these folks and then we're going to, you know, come for the homegrowns. And that if they get what they want with all these warehouse facilities, if they have that capacity, they're going to use it. And that's why it's so important to your point that we push back now. And I guess it is hopeful that is working. Let us talk about some of the more hopeful aspects of what you're doing, because it's been, got to be honest, Stuart, it's been kind of bleak the last 40 minutes or so here.
All right, let's talk about the good stuff.
So let's talk about the good stuff. You know, it's not just protest that you're doing there with the Indiana Organizing Project. There's a whole sort of mutual aid aspect to what you're doing as well. And I think you've sort of, hinted at it around the edges, like with the different families that you're working with. Can you just like tell us more about that aspect of the project?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've built a network of several hundred people. And the way it functions is, a family through a variety of networks ends up in contact with us. And we just immediately, it all starts with the relationships, because when you're organizing, relationships first is always the foundation. And, whether it's myself or one of our volunteers reaching out, the first thing that I always say is, you're not alone. You have a community of people here who care about you. What's the first thing we need to do? Right? Because that's the real fear that we see from folks every day is they feel very alone. They feel very paralyzed. They're in crisis, and they're also scared because maybe they're undocumented, maybe somebody else in their family is undocumented. And so one of the beautiful things that we've seen is how the community has come together to support families all over central Indiana, really all over the state, in every way, right? Whether that's food or diapers or household products, toiletries, rent assistance, utility assistance, legal guidance, right? We've started to get a pro bono legal program off the ground, which is all volunteer, right? Attorneys and retired attorneys and paralegals volunteering their time going, what can we do? How can we be helpful? We see the crisis. Can I take it? I always say, can you take on one case? Help us with one case, right? Because that case for that person means everything to them. And it's really, as much as I see the darkness every day, Scott, I also see the beauty of real community, people who really care about each other and are trying to be the best version of themselves. And that's what I believe in. I believe in challenging people to be the best version of themselves, and it trickles down. Or maybe that's not the right way to think about it, but I'll tell you, I told you about the woman who I went to see with the 4 U.S. citizen children. And we were talking to her. I actually took a journalist there to see her. That's why I was there. And I was just talking to her about, would you be willing to share your story in different, places? And mind you, she's crying the whole time. Like, this is a really emotional, traumatic experience. And she said, if I can do anything to prevent other families from having to suffer what we've suffered, I want to do it. And I heard the same thing from that detainee I described, right? Who said, it can't possibly get any worse in here. He said, if I can help one person not have to suffer what I've suffered for the last 2 years, then I want to do it. And I think it's a reminder that deep down, we as human beings, we have a lot of goodness in us. We have a lot of love in us. And sometimes we just have to challenge each other to be that version. You talk about sort of the cynical side, and I'm always like, put the cynicism down. Let's do something good together. You're going to feel better. We're going to do something good. We're going to make the world better. We can do it. And that is really where I come from. And so, that's our mutual aid network. And if anybody's listening to this and wants to get involved in the public campaign, to end ICE detention at Miami Correctional or the mutual aid work, please find me, Facebook, Blue Sky. I'm easy to find. You ask around, my phone number's out there. Give me a call. Because we want you involved. There's a lot of good things. There's a lot you can do to be helpful and to be a part of community right now.
How, I can tell that goodness, that care shines through on your end, Stuart. I can tell you're passionate about this. This isn't just like a job for you. How did you get into this line of work, the organizing? I'm sure there would be easier, potentially more lucrative things you could be doing. Why is this your calling?
I went to Notre Dame many, many years ago, and I took some time off from Notre Dame, and I traveled around Mexico for 7 months, and I was out talking. I thought I was going to write a book. I was just out interviewing people every day in a very casual, informal way. I was 20 years old, and it was a great experience. I love talking to people. I love just trying to get to the essence of who they are. And I came back to Notre Dame, and a friend was bugging me, oh, take this organizing class, take this organizing class. It was a 1-credit seminar taught by Jay Caponegro, a lovely human being. Rest in peace, Jay. And, we just had a couple of read this. We met a couple of times, but really the core of the class was we went to Chicago and met with different kinds of organizers for 4 very full days. And honestly, Scott, I couldn't believe that was a job I could do. I was like, wow, not only do I get to go and talk to people every day, but then we get to do good stuff and live out our values in the world based on those relationships. I can't believe this is a real thing. And so after college, I was recruited by Unite Here, which is the food service, hotel, casino workers union across the US and Canada. It's a great organization. I was with them for 13 years in various capacities. I took a job in a hotel here in Indianapolis to organize the union, something called salting, which many people have probably heard of. Yes. In Unite Here, salts don't get paid. It was, I took the job and I was there to learn, the draw for me was I wanted to learn how to organize. And they promised, and I could see the development of other salts. They promised, yeah, we're going to teach you how to organize. This is how we do it. And so I was with Unite Here for 13 years. I was the president of the chapter here in Indiana for the last several. And unfortunately, the pandemic was brutal. Everybody I knew got laid off. Everybody I knew was in crisis. I lost track of the number of people that I knew that died. And I had a pretty bad mental health crisis as a result. And but you try to learn the lessons from those things and you get stronger. And so I went from there to working at the immigration firm, but deep down, I'm really an organizer. That's my skill set. That's my passion. And so it's good to be back doing the work that I love and doing it in a way that, I've often told people, Scott, over the last 6 months, I've organized around a lot of economic and social justice campaigns, and I've won a lot of them. I'm proud of that. I have never felt the extreme moral clarity that I feel around this campaign. It is so obviously wrong what we are doing as a country to people and what we are contributing, the cruelty we're doing as a state through Miami Correctional. It's just so obvious because I see it every day and it's so unnecessary. And that propels me.
Working in hotel, restaurant, hospitality industry, it can be exploitative. Folks there are largely underpaid. I bet you run into a lot of folks who are immigrants in that line of work. Certainly, there's a lot of overlap in that Venn diagram there. But what we're doing now just really, turns it up to 11. This, makes wage theft seem quaint by comparison.
It's true. It's true. I mean, you're talking about, you're really talking about a level of trauma and suffering. And, we're literally talking about people dying at Miami Correctional. And the reality is that they want to make it much worse, right? They want to go, and the contract is to go to 1,000 detainees. One of the things we've talked about from the beginning on this campaign is some people have a hard time seeing, when I say 12 to 18 months to win a campaign, sometimes people are like, oh man, that's a long time. The first goal of this campaign is to prevent the expansion of ICE detention in Indiana. Indiana is being used as a detention hub for other states. The people in Miami Correctional are almost always from out of state. A lot of New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, up east. That is the reality. And they want to grow that from 600 to 1,000. That's what the contract is. Miami is the most likely place they will expand ICE detention in this state. And that's part of why this campaign is so important, is because we can actually, step one is preventing that. And step two is starting to roll those numbers back, right? And starting to close out those beds and saying, because it's not going to go 600 to 0. It's going to go 600 to 500 to 450 to 425. Like, it's going to go down little by little because we're pushing back. And I really believe that we're going to be successful.
How do you, maintain that hope, maintain that momentum when it is a slog? I think we as Americans are very much used to instant gratification.
I've won a number of campaigns that took a lot longer than a year. So I've been through it. I think that really helps. It's part of my ability to share wisdom. And then, people ask me what you asked about sort of my passion or how I found organizing. The reality is, look, I really care about the campaign, and I really care about preventing the harm and supporting the families in all the different ways that we do. But there's another reality, which is that the beauty of organizing is people become leaders who never saw themselves as leaders. People do things that they never thought they could do in public spaces. And it's like they see a new side of themselves. It's this beauty of self-growth and self-discovery that's already happening on this campaign. I was talking to several leaders about they had never led an action, and they led one of the actions on Saturday, and they were talking about, oh, I wish I had done this. And I said, yeah, but have you ever led an action like this? Well, no. I was like, great. Think about all the things you're learning right now. Think about that growth. That's how we're going to build. And then you're going to teach other people. That's really probably deep down my favorite part of the organizing. And when you enjoy that process, right, you think about the mom I was talking about, right? And the idea that she's going to share her story. She wants agency. She doesn't want to be a victim, right? People don't want to be victims. They want to have control of their lives. And opening that door so that she can share her story in a powerful way and be a part of the fight back, those are the victories along the way to the campaign victory. And I think, as an organizer, you really have to embrace that and find joy in it. And I say that very sincerely. Like, when we organize, I really believe that hope and joy, art and music and beauty, these are things that we have to include. We have to channel our anger into something better, and not just rage against the machine. So it's a genuine belief of mine.
Yeah, that mom you spoke of, she's inspiring. And the fact that, even while she's suffering and going through it herself, she's thinking about others and helping them so they don't have to suffer similarly. She shouldn't have to. But like, for guys like us, people like us that have certain privileges in this country that comes with a certain complexion or a certain status as a U.S. citizen, all we've got to do is exercise our free speech. We've got to stand up. We got to be loudmouths. I think a lot of us are prepared to do that. But we also have to maybe learn to get a little bit uncomfortable and like reconnect with people. We've been isolated a lot from each other. I think, the pandemic, I think, played a certain part of that, but it was going, even before then, you could see this, dynamic sort of taking hold. The irony that like we have social media and our phones, and we're like, instantly connected at the push of a fingertip to anybody, anywhere, yet we feel further apart from our neighbors and our fellow humans than ever, probably.
Yeah, I you hit the nail on the head. Community. I think people need community and don't even know it. And then they come out and it's part of what we try to do when we're doing, actions or events, is that opportunity to interact with people so that when you come out to something, you're there to see your friends as well as to express yourself publicly. I think it's fundamental. And I share these stories, from the detainee and the families who are experiencing this crisis in their lives. I share it because I hope it inspires somebody who hears this and says, you know what, if they can do it, if that detainee who's been in ICE detention over 2 years, or that mom who's got 4 U.S. citizen children and has been dealing with how to survive for 3 months, if they can do it, then I can do it too. Because you can't. I mean, anyone who's listening to this, we need you. We need you to be a part of it. Put down your social media, put down your phone. We got lots of things to do. We're going to put you to work, and you're going to feel good about it. That's the beauty. That's the beauty of community.
So, Stuart, for the folks who are listening or watching this right now, What do you need from us? How can we help? How can we get involved?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways. If you are someone who likes to be involved in sort of rallies, prayer vigils, those kinds of things, public events, we want you on our public campaign team. Okay, we did 27 actions on Saturday across the state. August 29th and 30th, we want it to be over 50. Okay, and that's going to mean people jumping in and saying, hey, I can lead an action over here. I can lead an action over there. Okay, that's something that people can get involved in. If you want to be on the mutual aid team, right? If you just say, hey, I'll help out those families any way I can, great. And, we also, if you have a little loose change lying around, we have a family assistance program. We do a lot. We collect a lot of donations and deliver them, but sometimes you just got to pay the rent or you got to pay the attorney, and that just needs cash. And so if you're interested in any of that, Stuart at indianaorganizing.org. Stuart, my name, Stuart at indianaorganizing.org. Hit me up and we'll get you connected and we'll put you to work, and we'd be glad to have you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so for the folks out there listening, again, hit up Stuart. There's a place for everybody in this movement, that whatever time or talent or money you have can be put to good use. Stuart, thank you so much for all the valuable work you're doing out there. Again, on behalf of just like a concerned human, thank you. It means a lot to me, and I'm sure it means infinitely more to the folks who you're helping directly. Stick around. I want to say goodbye to you on the other side, but for now, I'm going to send you backstage and say goodbye to
Thanks
our
so much,
viewers here this evening. Thanks so much for joining us here
tonight,
tonight, Stuart.
Appreciate everybody.
That, once again, was the invaluable Stuart Mora joining us from Indiana Organizing Project. Help him out and his organization out. Again, whatever way you can, there is a use for you in this movement. So thank you all for watching or listening. I will be back on Sunday morning as usual with Who's Left This Week. That streams at 10:30 a.m. Indiana's only unapologetically progressive Sunday morning politics talk show, where we talk about the week's top stories from U.S. and international news to what's going on right here in our state and how it's all interconnected. That's on YouTube, Facebook Live, and of course at progressiveindiana.net. My guests this Sunday are singer, songwriter, and candidate for Porter County Recorder, Leslie Nuss, as well as Bloomington DSA activist Bryce Green. Please join us. Plenty of other good stuff here on Progressive Indiana Network this week. We've got the Concerned Clergy podcast every Thursday morning. This Friday on Hold 'em Accountable, Derek Holder will explain the state party convention process. Then Friday evening, Brianna, the recovered Republican, will host Secretary of State candidate Blythe Potter for a virtual town hall where she'll take questions from viewers. So especially if you are a delegate to the convention, we'd like to hear from you. You can submit questions via the QR code, which I am now putting up on the screen and will leave there for the remainder of our show. Links will be found all over the place online on social media. Now, again, we can't deliver all this vital content without your support, so please consider contributing to Who's Left and the wider Progressive Indiana Network with a paid subscription if you're able. This independent media project relies solely on the generosity of kind patrons like you to make this information available for free to everybody. Again, that's at progressiveindiana.net. We could also really use a follow on social media at Progressive Indiana Network on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel at the same handle, and over on Blue Sky and TikTok, the handle is PIN Indiana. You can find me at whosleft.us on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads. It is at Who's Left on all the rest. That's HOOS Left. Direct message me at any of those sites with feedback, tips, ideas, and concerns, or email me at scott@whosleft.us. Finally, please forward the show to a friend and have them pass it on to Let's Keep Building This Project and a truly democratic state, one conversation at a time. Until the next one, I'm Scott Aaron Rogers. Love each other, Indiana.